Hi, welcome to part three. I just want to hammer home some things that I forgot to mention part 1 in part one, but that he was referring to them as scattered. Okay, scattered. All right. This suggests at the time Peter wrote, for Peter, he was still in Jerusalem. If he was off in Rome, he'd be part of the scattered. Does that make sense? Because in the Jewish mind, their standard universe was the temple, as a physical temple, and in Jerusalem. All right, and then the new covenant Jew now is above is free, mother of all. Okay, Galatians 4:26 that Paul trying to hammer home, but that's the point I'm trying to make. This heavily suggests that this is that Greek lexicon for 1 Peter 1:1. Just heavily suggests, okay, Israel and Gentile countries, okay. So Rome was in Italy, which was a Gentile country. Alrighty. So that makes sense. So this heavily suggests the very first verse of 1 Peter, he was still uh, doing his work in Jerusalem. Now, I had mentioned earlier on that he'd been in Babylon, Egypt. But wait a minute, did you say he was in Jerusalem? Remember John 21, he was told to feed and shepherd and feed them. Now, I believe there are three parts to this. The first part is physical feed, okay? And then the second verse, the second passage that where Jesus, this is John 21, where he mentions shepherd my people. Now we're getting the spiritual. And then the last part, feed, that's spiritual feed. That's feed them with the word, okay? And that's what Peter did. And for Peter and 2 Peter, it's three epistles. Notice I mentioned three. So 1 Peter 1 epistle, 2 Peter 1, chapter 1 and 2 is another epistle. 2 Peter chapter 3 is another epistle. All right. So, yeah. So, going with this. So, yeah. So Peter been going back and forth. So as you can see here, he's been here. So went by boat. He's a fisherman, right? He had a boat, and he'd been collecting fish along the way and then feeding them. All right. And at some point in AD 66, he identified the lawless one, which the key reason why he wrote First Peter. But again, he could not explicitly spell it out for them. When you mentioned they're scattered, it's collected in mind. Oh, it's time for the gathering. You have to keep in mind their culture, they're like a tight-knit family. Paul had already written to Church of Thessalonica, 2 epistles, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and he had mentioned about their gathering what has to take place first. Well, the lawless one had to be revealed first, and that's where Peter came in. And by writing to them that very first verse, he's hinting to them it's time to go. So keep in mind they had their oral traditions, especially behind the scenes of Gentiles, because they could not afford to have the Gentile persecution follow them if they left their gathering. So Peter was going back and forth here to feed them. He certainly would not been way over in Rome to feed them back and forth to fulfill John 21. I believe John 21 took place all the way to the point of his death. That seems to be the nature of the way that chapter illustrates what Jesus is trying to say, all the way to the point of death. And Peter apparently had a horrific death, whatever it was. His death did not have to take place in Rome, because remember, Pilate, he's a Roman citizen, and he had authority over Jesus, whether he's going to live or not. And he was in Jerusalem. So it doesn't have to take place in Rome. So this story about him being upside down because he didn't feel worthy, that's all fabricated. It's possible that he died on a cross, but The problem is, you have to understand papyrus is an expensive commodity back then. That's what they wrote on. Is rare and expensive commodity. Not like paper today, in abundance and cheap. And people are going to have paper sitting around and just write on it. Papyrus was very expensive back then, so to get the stuff in writing was pretty rare. And keep in mind, I believe Constantine did destroy Jewish history. So stuff that would have been beneficial to us um, no longer there, which allowed him to rewrite history using Eusebius to centralize power around Rome, which he did with the birth of the Roman Catholic Church. All right, so of course they tried to make it look like it all started in the first century. The Catholic Church, the Universal Church, yes, started in the first century, but the Roman Catholic Church started in the fourth century. All right. So anyway, hope that makes sense. So he's still doing his work in Jerusalem. He's still doing what Jesus told Adam to do: feed my lambs, feed my sheep, and he had been feeding them, and then going back this direction, west, to feed his family, visit his family every now and then. So go back and forth. Alrighty. So anyway, hope this makes sense where I'm coming from. Now, can some of what I'm saying be proven? No, and it never will be. And I believe in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, God rewarded those who diligently seek Him, which includes His Word. And so we know if Paul knew what he was talking about pertaining to a gathering, then we know it had to take place. So either Paul knew what he was talking about or he didn't. If he did not know what he was talking about, then the gathering could still be future for all we know. But no, since he knew what he was talking about and applying basic rules of hermeneutics, it had to have taken place in their lifetime. And so, because he's writing to them pertaining to their circumstances, what's about to take place. So, and that's partly why there's so much confusion today, because when it comes to hermeneutics, typical Christian today has no idea. Typical pastor today, not very fluent at all. They might get into the original language, but comply at the completely wrong audience. And once you do that, then you're no longer getting the author's intent. And it's a mess. I imagine someday in the future, a higher percentage of Christians are going to have better understanding of hermeneutics, so they'll be able to understand the author's intent of the Bible a little bit better. So anyway, yeah, so this wraps up part 3. I just want to clarify those things what I was getting at. So anyway, thank you very much, and hope you continue to enjoy your studies. Have a good day.